Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The public inquiry into the Emergencies Act continues in Ottawa. We hear from a lawyer from the Justice Centre who explains what we can expect to hear this week. There's a crisis with Canada's military. We hear from the Chief of Defence, General Wayne Eyre, as to what the problem is. And a special ride took place in Lethbridge over the weekend, honoring a motorcyclist who tragically lost his life around 2 weeks ago.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The public inquiry into the Emergencies Act continues in Ottawa. Over the next 6 weeks, 65 witnesses will come forward offering testimony of what transpired during the protests in both Ontario and Alberta. Now, some of the witnesses include Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Freedom Convoy organizer Tamara Leach. Haddam Kerr is a lawyer with the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. He's headed to the hearings and joins us now from Hamilton. So, Haddam, what can we really expect this week from the public inquiry?
Well, this week, the inquiry is moving through the witnesses in a logical order. So this week, we're hearing from a number of city officials, and then towards the end of the week, we're going to start hearing from some of the police officers. So right now, it's going to be very much about the on-the-ground response and what was done and what wasn't done.
Will anything really happen if the Commissioner determines that the Emergencies Act should not have been invoked? I mean, could Prime Minister Trudeau actually resign?
Well, it's difficult to say. From a legal perspective, the commissioner's report doesn't have a legal force of weight. It's not like it's not like a decision at the end of a trial that makes someone liable for something or someone guilty in some sort of way. That said, these things do have persuasive value. But in terms of the political effect, it's really going to depend on the public's reception of it and how that's magnified by most likely the media coverage and that kind of thing. It's going to determine a lot in terms of that sort of softer political pressure.
Thanks so much, Haddam. That was Haddam Kerr, lawyer for the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, joining us from Hamilton. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland met with reporters following meetings with the International Monetary Fund and World Bank in Washington, D.C. Freeland raised eyebrows with a stark vision of the world's economic future and a call for Western countries to fast-track more energy products.
It's going to require significant investment, public, private, Canadian, international, and it's going to require us to build a lot of stuff. What I wanted to do first and foremost is say to the world, look, Canada gets it. This is what we are doing. And if people who heard my speech thought, wow, the Canadians really are doing some great stuff here, I'm going to go visit Canada and invest some money and create some great jobs in Canada, that would be a really good thing.
Canada's Innovation Minister says the best is yet to come when it comes to the Canadian electric vehicle industry. Francois-Philippe Champagne said there will be more than $18 billion in investments in the EV industry over the next 4 years.
I really realized that I think we can be the green supplier of choice to the world. I mean, we're going to be manufacturing green steel, green aluminum, hope green batteries, and even after green microchips. But I also realized that, I've spent quite some time abroad myself in business. Say not everyone in the world wakes up thinking about Canada. So you have to really make the case. But once you make it, people understand it. Let's be honest. We have not had discussion with the German automakers for at least at the senior executive level. I don't want to say ever, but close to ever. No one in the department could really remember. It's pretty amazing that in a couple of months, we've gone to basically very limited relationship, apart from the dealership in Canada, to the highest level where we signed with the German Chancellor, the Prime Minister of Canada, myself, and Robert Dees. So the fact that we brought like BASF, that we brought GM and POSCO, that we have now Umicore in Kingston, that we have renewed the mandate of all the auto manufacturers in Canada, whether it's Toyota, Honda, GM, Ford, Stellantis, which is the former Chrysler. This is getting noticed around the world.
It looks like there may be a crisis brewing with our military. The commander of the Canadian Armed Forces says there's an unprecedented personnel shortage. General Wayne Eyre says with 10,000 positions sitting unfulfilled, It's making it even more difficult for the military to conduct missions overseas and requests for help here at home.
Well, our numbers are down, and we need to rebuild the armed forces. We need to get the numbers back up. We need to rebuild the readiness that's required to be able to deliver operationally, and we've got to do it with a sense of urgency and priority, because it is affecting our ability to respond around the world. Yeah, we are short. It's affecting our readiness. And so what is readiness? Well, it's the ability to respond at speed and at scale. And so it's going to affect the scale piece. Yeah, we can still respond, but smaller numbers. And so that is of great concern.
Well, we enjoyed another spectacular day in many parts of southwestern Alberta weather-wise today. Lots of sunshine and very warm temperatures. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek of the forecast. Jeanette, those beautiful summer-like conditions should remain for most of the week?
Yeah, they should, Hal. Today being the warmest of them. After today, we should see that temperature drop slightly. Into this evening, we are looking at an overnight temperature in the 3-degree range, which is still warmer than the average low for this time of year. Into tomorrow, Tuesday, mainly sunny skies, high of 21. That southwest wind should be easing up a little bit as well, making it feel even warmer. I'll be back later on in the show with that 7-day forecast for you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Well, it appears as though the pandemic and the high cost of food has forced yet another Lethbridge business to close its doors. Sam's Donaires and Hamburgers, which was a mainstay in our city for 2 decades, is the latest to shut down. Now, we brought you the story last week of Mocha Cabana not being able to stay afloat due to inflation and the pandemic. Leanna Kamaladine is the owner of Sam's Donaires and Hamburgers, and she said with food and delivery costs going through the roof, she just couldn't make a go of it anymore.
It was impossible the last 3-4 months to even try to bridge the gap. I mean, we barely squeaked by through COVID, and just the prices of things are just astronomical. You know, the case of chicken that we used to use went from $15 to $40 within a week. The tub of mayo that we use went from $17 to $75. And even the delivery costs, right? Because some stuff we had to get from out of town. And that went from $70, $80 a week, which was doable. And then the next week it was $230. There was just absolutely no way to continue to bridge that gap.
And I'm one of the casualties. I was an employee with Sam's and I lost my job. So it just comes with the territory. I don't know what I'm going to do next. But yeah, I was one of the ones who got laid off.
And we would like to thank all of our loyal customers for the last 20 years. And I wish it had a different outcome.
Kamaladine says 6 people lost their jobs when Sam's Donaires and Hamburgers had to close their doors here in Lethbridge. A number of residents, including over 100 from our motorcycle community, rode through the city and wore orange on Saturday to honor the life of a young rider who tragically lost his life 2 weeks ago. As Angela Stewart explains now, the Ride for Jake event will now be held annually to promote biker awareness and safety on our roads.
A large turnout Saturday saw many participate in a memorial ride to honor a young Lethbridge motorcyclist and raise awareness for rider safety.
We came together and we really made this something special and much bigger than anybody thought it could be today.
On October 4th, 25-year-old Jake Legg was killed after colliding with a car while riding his motorcycle. Legg's death a shock to many, including friend Chris Yoakum, who organized the ride and event called See a Bike, Save a Life.
I just knew as being part of the biking community that I felt a responsibility to do something small for Jake, just a small ride for his friends and family to honor him. We got a really great turnout today, so I know Jake would be super happy about that.
Thanks to the help of many other organizations, including Southern Alberta Bikers, Ride for Dad, and One Broken Biker, the event drew out more than 120 riders from the motorcycle community. Participants also wore the color orange as it was Legg's favorite color.
I think that's a really great representative of a nice visible color on the road.
He'd be so proud right now. He'd be so happy to see everybody come together.
Overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from the community, Legg's family says he made a big impact.
It means a lot to everybody to know how much everybody loved him. He was always such a full of life and always wanted everybody to be together all the time, and always trying to join everybody together and look after everybody.
Moving forward, See a Bike, Save a Life will be an annual event.
I don't want anybody to ever experience such a devastating loss like we did. Just everybody just watch out, look on the roads, and to make sure everyone's loved one comes home.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
That's tough. Monday marked the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. Now, a new report has been released that says in 2019, just over 15% of children and youth in Lethbridge and surrounding area were living in low-income households. Video journalist Micah Quinn has all of the details on the report, including what local organizations in our city are saying about what can be done to help change the narrative.
The Social Health Equity Network of Lethbridge, or SHENLA for short, is a group made up of local organizations and members of the community. Their focus is to address equity issues in Lethbridge and the surrounding area. A new report released by SHENLA, called the 2022 Lethbridge Child and Family Poverty Report, paints a grim picture of poverty in our city. The report outlines that in 2016, 42% of children and youth were living in poverty. Fast forward 3 years to 2019, 15% of children and youth in Lethbridge were also facing those same challenges. Sharon Yannicki, who works with SHENLA, presented with the United Way of Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta's Executive Director, Jackie Zalisak, at a recent SPC meeting to highlight how these issues can be addressed.
We wanted to address a living wage as an opportunity for businesses in the city of Lethbridge, but also something that City Council could adopt. And if the city of Lethbridge applied it to all of their employees and to all of their contractors, we could raise a lot of families out of poverty just with that.
The report went on to say that in 2012, the cost of poverty in Alberta was estimated to be between $7.1 and $9.5 million per year. When you adjust those numbers and add inflation into the mix, the cost of poverty in 2022 would be between $8.4 and $11.4 billion per year. Zalisak says inflation has been hurting families in Lethbridge.
Food costs are exceptionally high. Lethbridge has one of the highest costs of food, as well as electricity in all of the province.
Over at the Lethbridge Food Bank, the executive director, Mac Nickel, says the number of children and youth who are accessing the food bank has shot up.
One of our biggest measurements for that is our Mindful Munchies program. We provide lunches to all low income in Lethbridge. That program, we're serving about 1,000 more lunches a month over last year.
Additional stats from the report say that according to the Alberta Living Wage Network, a living wage in Alberta is currently at $19 an hour as of 2021. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Until November the 11th, the Milk River Emergency Department will be temporarily closed overnight. Alberta Health Services says the closure is due to a lack of doctors, and add that they're working to make sure that those who live in the town have access to the care that they need. Nursing staff, however, will be available to assist long-term care residents. Now, during the closure, AHS says anyone who needs medical attention can access it at the Raymond Hospital or the Chinook Regional Hospital here in Lethbridge. Albertans can now get their annual flu shots. The immunization campaign offers the influenza vaccine free of charge in our province for Albertans 6 months of age and older. COVID-19 vaccines, including boosters, may also be offered at the same time to people who are eligible. Albertans, if they choose to do so, can get immunized at public health clinics, local pharmacies, and certain doctors' offices. A Lethbridge pharmacist says his pharmacy was flooded with eager people wanting to get their flu vaccine on the very first day it was being offered. Vijal Sukadia, owner of the medicine shop near the Chinook Regional Hospital, had to open its doors early to serve the crowd. But that didn't stop him from setting up an immunization station at the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen over the lunch hour. Sukadia explains why it is so important to offer the shot to vulnerable residents as soon as possible.
They are the ones less educated about the flu shot, how it is beneficial for them. So coming here, it just gives them a more opportunity to get the flu shot. And they are the ones, if they don't get a flu shot, if they contract the flu, they will end up in a hospital with complications because of their underlying medical conditions.
A new 4-year operating budget for the City of Lethbridge will be presented on Tuesday. The draft budget for the next 4 years is forecasting a municipal property tax increase of 3.77%. Now, for a $285,800 single-family home, that'll total around an extra $94 a year. That does not include any new initiatives or changes to service levels. Now, in 2019, there was a 1.82% municipal tax increase. According to Stats Canada, Lethbridge is currently ranked #1 with the highest crime severity index in the country. And Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan also discussed the idea of possibly bringing back $1 million into the police budget for our city. He said he would continue to push for more funding for LPS during budget deliberations.
It's something that obviously I was a strong advocate for keeping the police budget the way that it was going forward, and the reduction definitely is, in my opinion, has been a struggle with our community, because having the safety aspect that comes along with that, I believe, has been altered a little bit. So I think it's important to be able to get that budget back to what it was. That will be part of the discussions, and I'm hoping that it is supported.
Operating budget approvals will take place from November 14th through the 18th during the Economic SBC meeting. Recommendations will be forwarded to Lethbridge City Council by November the 29th, and Council will have to approve an operating budget by December the 31st. A Kelowna, BC driver is facing a criminal charge of dangerous driving after an RCMP officer clocked his Porsche traveling 270 kilometers an hour on the Trans-Canada Highway west of Calgary. Mounties say the car was going near 2.5 times the posted speed limit on September the 15th. Now, the speed limit on that stretch of highway is just 110 kilometers an hour. The 36-year-old man, who has been charged with dangerous driving, is scheduled to appear in Cochrane Provincial Court on December the 13th. Vancouver businessman Ken Sim has been elected as the next mayor of Vancouver. Sim defeated Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart, posting an overwhelming victory after losing the mayoral race to Stewart in 2018 by less than 1,000 votes. Sim becomes Vancouver's first Chinese mayor. He says his first order of business will be supporting Vancouverites with more law enforcement.
On day one, we are going to requisition for 100 new police officers and 100 tax. We're going to plant the first of 100,000 new trees. And awesome. We got some tree lovers here, that's great. And Mark, we'll get there. We'll get there. You know what? We got a lot of work on. I got pages on this stuff here. And we will work to make Vancouver the most accessible city in the world.
A BC Supreme Court judge has sentenced an internet sextortionist to a precedent-setting 13 years behind bars for the prolonged torment he caused teen Amanda Todd before she took her own life at the age of 15. Justice Martha Devlin says Aidan Coben's actions contributed to Todd's suicide in 2012, and he continues to show no remorse nor any interest in being rehabilitated.
The judge just imposed a sentence that was higher than what Crown asked for. That was amazing. It was amazing because it was justice for Amanda and justice for all, like I posted on my social media. This will make a difference in the world for the kids, and I have to hope that Amanda's watching from somewhere to see what her voice did for everyone.
Canada's Public Safety Minister is visiting Saskatchewan's James Smith Cree Nation and the Prince Albert Grand Council, where he's to meet with families of the victims of the recent mass stabbing. Marco Mendocino's visit will focus on Indigenous public safety and policing. 11 people died in the stabbing massacre last month on the First Nation and in nearby Weldon, located northeast of Saskatoon. 18 people were also injured, and the suspect, Miles Sanderson, later died while in police custody. Thousands of people continue to march in the streets of Tehran, Iran, protesting the Islamic Republic's treatment of its citizens. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says the government is even deploying terrorist proxies into the country to aid security forces in cracking down on protests.
Right. And this was the fear from the beginning because this is what they resort to. There's a few reasons for this. First, because their own military could use the help. Second, because the Arab-speaking Basij or Hezbollah fighters don't have any emotional connection to the people or the protesters. So they will, in fact, crack down brutally, violently, whatever it takes to suppress the movement.
Lisa Daftari will also have details of how Russia is taking people from homeless shelters in their country and forcing them to fight in the war in Ukraine. She'll have details coming up in the second half of our program. Well, it was another spectacular day here in the city of Lethbridge, and the summer-like conditions should continue for the rest of the week. Full weather details are coming up. It is so hard to believe that we're in the middle of October and we're still seeing well above 20 degrees here in Lethbridge. Incredible. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, the gorgeous weather should remain for the entire week?
Yep, sunshine and mainly clear skies all week, Hal. It's only when we get closer to the weekend that we're going to see some moisture developing and those temperatures falling a bit below average for this time of year. But until then, we're looking at mainly sunny skies, highs in the 20s, looking at a high of 21 for Tuesday. Same thing for Wednesday, up to 22 on Thursday. So that's 21 for Tuesday and Wednesday, 22 on Thursday, down to 16 on Friday. And then look at that. We're going to have that showers and 12 degrees and then down to 9 degrees on Sunday. Why does it have to happen on the weekend? We could have had one more weekend in the 20s. I would have loved that. But average high for this time of year, 14. So we can't complain because we've been up above that for the majority of October as we're looking to the back half of it now. Average low for this time of year, 26. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1963. And in 1992, we had a chilly minus 10 on this day. 7:56, that's when the sun rose this morning. Sun set this evening at 6:38 p.m., giving us 10 hours and 42 minutes of daylight. Over on the west coast, we're seeing mainly sunny skies, a bit of fog in Victoria, 17 the high there, 17 also in Vancouver with a mix of sun and cloud, also hazy conditions in the afternoon. 19 the high in Edmonton, mainly clear skies, and a beautiful day in Calgary tomorrow as well with sunshine and a high of 22 degrees. Across the rest of the prairies, we're seeing mainly clear skies for both Regina and Saskatoon. Saskatoon sitting at 18 tomorrow, 15 the high in Regina. Winnipeg, nice clear skies, but chilly. We're looking at minus 15, the wind chill in the morning, and then going to climb up to 2 degrees and a 15-kilometer-per-hour wind. So feeling a little bit more like winter coming on in Winnipeg. I guess that's why they call it Winterpeg. 8 degrees the high in Toronto, seeing some showers there. Ottawa looking at showers as well with an 11-degree high. Montreal, heavier showers, looking at 5 millimeters of rain and a high of 12 degrees as well. As we look to Fredericton, high of 18 degrees, chance of showers. Halifax as well, mix of sun and cloud, 21 degrees the high there, 20 the high in Charlottetown tomorrow, looking at some rain showers there. And St. John's, Newfoundland, high of 12 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Are you tired of high energy bills? Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
Canada's telecom regulator says it needs more time to consider a request from TELUS to start charging a 1.5% processing fee to customers using a credit card to pay their bill. TELUS filed the application with the CRTC August the 8th, requesting permission to start adding the fee this fall. But the CRTC says it will not make a decision until December the 6th. TELUS says the average cost of the fee each month will be around $2 per customer. It will not apply in Quebec, however, which has banned businesses from passing credit card fees onto consumers. The Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers says Loblaw's decision to freeze prices on its no-name house brand until the end of January could hurt smaller grocers in Canada. A spokesperson for the Federation says if the move cuts into Loblaw's revenues, the company could look to recoup losses through tougher negotiations with suppliers. Gary Sand says in turn, that could have a ripple effect that leads suppliers to raise prices for independent grocers. The move by Loblaw comes as Canada's big grocery retailers have been under fire for continuing to post strong profits while consumers are hit with higher prices. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 294 points on the day to finish at 18,621. The Dow was up 550 points to 30,185. The S&P 500 was up 94 on the day to 3677, and the Nasdaq was up 354 to 10,675. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 3 cents to 85.64 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 49 cents to 5.96 US. Gold was up 4 cents to 16.50.13 US an ounce, and silver was up 2 cents to 18.67 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.66 per bushel, barley's at $9.80, canola's at $19.28, and corn is at $12.45 per bushel. Live cattle were up 93 cents to $147.88, feeder cattle were up 95 cents to $174.75, and lean hogs were up $2.70 to $84.95. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 72.91 US. Recapping one of our top stories, it appears as though the pandemic and the high cost of food has forced yet another Lethbridge business to close its doors. Sam's Donairs and Hamburgers on Mayor McGrath Drive South is the latest to shut down. Liana Kameladine is the owner of Sam's Donairs, and she said with food and delivery costs going through the roof, she just couldn't make a go of it anymore. Last week, we brought you the story of another restaurant, Mocha Cabana, which closed its doors due to the pandemic and the high cost of food. There are reports that Russia is grabbing men off the streets and from homeless shelters and sending them into battle in Ukraine. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details for us in just a moment. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Former U.S. President Barack Obama admits that he made a mistake in failing to support Iranians back in 2009 when they were protesting the regime, which has been suppressing its people for many years now. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the massive protests continue in Iran against the Islamic Republic. Obama now says he should have done more.
Yeah, well, if I quote many of the Iranians who commented on our page when we posted the story, too little, too late. The reaction from the Iranians, both expatriates and inside Iran, is, well, yes, he should have done more because that was the right thing to do instead of chasing a nuclear deal that led us nowhere. But if he in fact felt this way, why did it take him and his wife 1 month to issue a statement of support for the current Iranian protesters that are out in the streets? As you know, people who are following this story are waiting for so many of these so-called champions of human rights, whether they're politicians or celebrities, to come out with statements of support, because they're the ones who can now become the social media ambassadors for a story that many people believe is not being properly covered by the mainstream media. So if in fact Barack Obama felt this way, then he should have come out sooner with his wife, because many people follow their social media accounts. Many people are waiting for them as political figures to come out with a statement of support. Nonetheless, better late than never in some ways, but we hope that this now translates into the Biden administration, which many people call the third term of the Obama presidency. Many hope that this now encourages the Biden administration to move forward in a different way with the Iran movement, to walk away from the Iran nuclear negotiations and to support the protesters going forward.
Lisa, there's word now that as protests continue over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, the Islamic Republic is deploying its terrorist proxies into the country to aid security forces in cracking down on protesters.
Right. And this was the fear from the beginning, because this is what they resort to. There's a few reasons for this. First, because their own military could use the help. Second, because the Arab-speaking Basij or Hezbollah fighters don't have any emotional connection to the people or the protesters. So they will, in fact, crack down brutally, violently, whatever it takes to suppress the movement. And lastly, this is what they did in 1979. Many people report at that time that there was Arabic-speaking or Pakistani fighters on the streets of Iran trying to take down the reign of the Shah of Iran. That's what brought in this regime. And of course, many people are alluding to the fact that they may try these same tactics right now to quell the current protests.
Lisa, the Jerusalem Post is reporting that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been kidnapping 15-year-old child protesters. Does this just show that the state will stop at nothing in its attempts to quell the protests?
And to think this regime sits on the UN Committee for Human Rights, for women's rights. It's crazy what they are doing. I mean, where are the champions of human rights globally who need to do something to speak out and to create awareness about what the regime is doing? The way that they are rounding up women, molesting them, raping them, rounding up children, rounding up anyone, really. Their only goal is to say empower. A regime that will resort to this kind of violence against its own constituents, that will go into a university and kill its finest, that will set fires allegedly at their prisons where they're holding political and protesters, detainees, they'll stop at nothing. And that truly is the illustrative of what this regime has done for 43 years. It has stepped on human rights. It has repressed its women, its children, its finest, its authors, its poets, journalists, anyone who is looking to expand and to think and to question this regime. And that's what they're trying to underscore in the global community.
You know, it appears as though NATO is getting more serious about sending robots into ground combat. Now, the Royal Netherlands Army has been experimenting with Estonian-built robotics engineering in Lithuania.
Yeah, this is a crazy story, but one that can perhaps gain some momentum. They're on to something. We've seen actually some of this from the Israeli army when they try to send in unmanned vehicles, even on the ground, not just drones, but really they are testing all sorts of vehicles that will be basically the artificial intelligence or the unmanned robots that will do the fighting for us so that we don't have to send in human beings. I actually was at a conference at Ben Gurion University years ago, and they actually showed this technology can also help in cars that will help in drunk driving, so that if you can't drive the car, your car and the robotics and the technology of it, that is way over my head, but that could basically kick in and save someone's life should they need that control of the car. Now we're seeing that with the Royal Army of Netherlands, and perhaps this could be something new and really bring us into the next chapter of robotics, of military technology, and so on.
Could you imagine that? Let's say attacking drones, attacking unmanned tanks. This almost takes me back to when I was a kid and we were just playing with our
like
toys.
video games. Absolutely.
It's amazing with technology today. Lisa, some more horrific news coming out of Ukraine. A UN official says Russia is giving soldiers Viagra to rape Ukrainians.
I mean, if this is true, this is honestly the lowest of the low in terms of the Russian army, and we can't put anything past them in that capacity. There are many stories coming out about the horrific way in which the Russian soldiers have been told to torture people and to rape women and to really kill anyone that gets in their way, to really understand the task. And this is not the first story we're hearing about rape. It is the first that we're hearing about Viagra being given to them. But if this is in fact true, it's horrific. This needs to be underscored. The human rights aspect of this war is hardly talked about. We talk more about the strategy and the fact that it's taken Putin so long. We talk about different cities that are being taken over, that are perhaps being annexed, that are perhaps being taken back by the Ukrainians in some capacity. But we talk about it in terms of military strategy, but we don't talk about the human rights aspect of this. And this story really highlights the fact that these people are there, and there are families. They're watching this horrific war unfold before their eyes, and really the women, the children, the families. If they were not one of the lucky ones to get out of the country, this is the experience that they're having right now.
And Russia, apparently, which is allegedly really desperate for troops right now, is taking men off the streets and from homeless shelters to fight in Ukraine?
Yeah, if you remember, this is about a month ago, they announced the compulsory draft. And so many Russian men, young men, started leaving the country and trying to get to neighboring countries in order to not be part of the draft. There were protests in the country. They started rounding up the protesters at that point. It looks like they're desperate for manpower. And in that capacity, again, we talk about, where is the end of all of this? If Russia is not backing down, because we do hear about the fact that they have been weakened, they don't have the manpower, they need these soldiers, they need men to go into combat. But yet we don't see them surrendering. We don't see them backing down. We see them pushing forward. So it's really in this purgatory that the whole world is stuck in, watching Putin and giving him really the upper hand to make the next move. But again, what is the off-ramp? What will make him stop all of this? And the biggest question being, will he escalate this attack to go into nuclear weapons and such forth, a nuclear attack, in order to have that final climactic ending that will put him as the victor when it comes down to the timeline of history. And again, big questions here with very few answers, but again, the fallout being the Russians that are being dragged into this war that do not want it, and the Ukrainians who are truly the victims of this invasion.
Has there been any discussion whatsoever about peace talks between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin? Where are we standing with that?
Right. As of late, we haven't heard anything moving forward about this. We know that there have been a few suggestions that are on the table, but it looks like when Zelensky comes out in public, the president of Ukraine, the only thing he's doing is asking for more money and more weapons. And with Russia, well, of course, Putin is, thumping his chest as usual and making it known that he will move forward. So we're not hearing much about moving closer to peace talks or surrender or compromises or anything like that at this point. But again, the global powers, they're not really interfering in order to push forward for peace talks. They're actually, when they do come out, they come out in support of Ukraine and pledge another billion or whatever it is to help support Zelensky and his war as well.
It's interesting. We've seen a lot of video as well from Associated Press here at Bridge City News of farmers trying to harvest their crops to feed not only people of Ukraine, but a lot of dire countries in need in Africa, different African nations, but they can't access a lot of their crops because of all of the mines that have been planted throughout their fields. Some of the troops pull away, they plant all of these mines, so it's making things even more horrific for a lot of people in Ukraine, including the farmers, the producers. Lisa, China's leader Xi Jinping is expected to receive a third 5-year term. That breaks a record and establishes himself as one of the most powerful Chinese politicians in history.
That's the thing about dictators, right? They can keep assigning themselves another term and another term and another term. And guess what? They set records for themselves. In this case, obviously, he has big aspirations as the leader of China to grow the empire that he has built, to expand in the region, to take over Taiwan, that he has pledged to take over. The world is just watching. I mean, we have allowed China to move forward with a lot of their aspirations. And even though there are very close kind of confrontations with China, there has never actually been a heated one. There has never been a direct one. And again, we sit back for him to have yet another term, and we will watch what will happen in this next term regarding Taiwan especially.
How tenuous is the relationship right now between the Biden administration and Xi Jinping, especially with China throwing its support behind Russia?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of a dance there, right? So the U.S. shows its presence in the waters surrounding China, and then China moves forward with showing its might by doing a missile test or showing up in the airspace over Taiwan after Nancy Pelosi's visit, for example. So there has been this kind of push and pull between the two. But again, with his announcement of another term and the Biden administration being very busy with Ukraine, with so many other foreign policy crises, for lack of a better word, China we're continuing this dance and watching what the next move will be.
Now, you talked about missile testing. Let's also circle back to North Korea for just a moment. What's the threat looking like when it comes to South Korea? Is there more missile testing going on there as well?
Yeah, South Korea looks like it has to take matters into its own hands. They have tried to collaborate with the United States, with Japan, and they have to a certain extent in order to basically be able to confront the threat from North Korea. Obviously, they know that they have many global powers in their corner as well in warding off the North Korean threat. But again, it goes back to a White House that has a kind of a leadership role in the global community, where there wouldn't be these types of threats, where there wouldn't be these provocations that are happening. When you look at China, when you look at Afghanistan, when you look at North Korea, you look at the Iran regime, they all understand that they have 2 more years of a Biden presidency that will not be America first, that will not want to flex its powers or will not want to get involved in another war. Look how many we're involved in already, right? So, I mean, the Biden administration is trying to tighten the reins on foreign policy because they see what the last 2 years have done, how damaging it has been for our relationship with China and North Korea and the Iran regime and the Taliban and Afghanistan, and the list goes on. So we'll see if this can be corrected in some ways, because we are seeing, again, some sort of retreat from the Biden White House when it comes to certain foreign policy situations. But again, their own platform, the current White House has a foreign policy of appeasement, and they also have, tried to get along, so to speak, with many of our rogue enemies, adversaries, and again, it hasn't worked. So let's see if this revamping of our reshaping of foreign policy in certain aspects will bring us more global security. Will have our assets be safer and more secure in different parts of the world, and makes for a better foreign policy going forward.
Lisa, before we let you go, let's bring things a little closer to home for just a moment here, and let's talk a bit about Donald Trump. There are rumors and there's word that he's considering running again for the next federal election. What are you hearing?
Yeah, there's definitely rumors. He probably will come out with an announcement sometime soon, because he will have to start campaigning. Meanwhile, the mainstream media has not been too friendly. He's involved in a few different scandals and court cases, and they're trying to subpoena him for different things. And look, he will have a very tough time running, even making it to candidacy, because of all of this. And look, it's always been an uphill battle for him, and he's overcome. So who knows what the future holds? But meanwhile, there are others joining the race, like the governor of Florida, DeSantis, and a few others. So who knows? It's going to be a very interesting election year for 2024 here in the United States. So we shall see what Trump's role will be in all of that.
She's a political reporter and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us again from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, Alberta has a new premier. We have the highest influx of Canadians moving in from other provinces. We have some of the lowest fuel and utility prices, and currently, Alberta's economy and research and development are firing on all cylinders. Many in British Columbia, in fact, are even saying that if Alberta were to separate from Canada, they would want to have their region of BC join the new Alberta. So to talk more about what's going on in the province, Dave Naylor, editor of the Western Standard, joins me. Dave, welcome back to Bridge City News. Great to have you on again.
Great to be here, Jeanette. You're describing Alberta like a Garden of Eden.
Right. Well, and of course, we were just talking about the weather too, so it feels that way lately. It's been so warm and sunny. But Dave, the first stop on our whirlwind tour of Alberta is, of course, the selection of Danielle Smith by UCP membership. So how do you think this first week has been for the UCP?
Well, it had some good and it had some bad. As you mentioned, we're only a week into the premiership of Danielle Smith. She didn't win by a lot, 53% or something like that. So she's got a fractured party to deal with and try and hold together until the next election, May 29th. All the other leadership candidates are saying the right thing, and they're going to move together to present unity. But her very first press conference, she seemed to put her foot in her mouth by saying people who were unvaccinated against COVID face some of the biggest discrimination she's ever seen in her life. And of course, some media picked up on that and got outraged from various groups and organizations. And Smith issued a statement the next day, and she didn't apologize. She just clarified it and said, she's going to work and work with all these other groups, and we must stamp out discrimination on all levels. Some of the bad news: Premier John Horgan to the West called her comments quote laughable and not worth commenting on, and then of course he commented on it.
Right, commenting on the comment, yeah.
Yeah. But to the east, we've got Premier Scott Moe. He's basically, putting stuff out along the same lines that Danielle Smith did with her Sovereignty Act. So Moe is coming out with a series of announcements that the Trudeau policies will take more than $100 billion out of the Saskatchewan economy in the next few years, and they're starting to talk about what powers they can protect and what overreaches of the federal government they can try and stop. So it wasn't a bad start. They're now UCP will go away to Sylvan Lake for a little weekend retreat, and then she'll name her cabinet, which is going to be interesting. Smith eliminated Sonia Savage. She won't be back. She was one of the co-chairs on Travis Tave's leadership committee. And she basically gave Dina Hinshaw the heave-ho, our chief medical officer. Danielle Smith said she'll be getting her medical advice from somebody else in the future. So, you know what? The UCP's made a lot of news this week, and it's always good fun when there's a new premier involved.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been just a very eventful week, like you mentioned here. And of course, we're talking about Danielle Smith's comments. And I think one of the things she might have to watch out for is just the way she phrases things, her language a little bit. So with that said, do you think that she was the right choice for leader?
Well, I mean, she certainly got the most votes. And you're right, she does tend to speak a lot quicker than she probably should. You remember during the campaign, she made some comments about cancer, and basically, I think she said how it was avoidable if you eat the right things and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't a well thought out comment, and obviously some of the media picked on it and ripped her apart for it. You know what? But I don't mind that. I like to see politicians speak their mind. I don't, and not just reading out. Statements in front of them. So she's been out of politics a long time, and I'm sure she'll make a few missteps along the way, as long as, unlike Premier Kenney, she comes out and owns them and admits them, and when she says so, say she's sorry. Certainly didn't hear many I'm sorry for that comments during Kenney's reign, and I think that's one of the things I think that took him down.
And it makes for some interesting news headlines as well. So what would be your advice to her if you were to give her talking points, Dave? Or would you at all? Would you just let her do what she does?
If I'm her speechwriter, I think you've got to appeal to the people that got her there, so to speak, so she doesn't lose that base. She's got to take a deep breath and just think before she talks, but not lose the appeal of the honesty and being able to see there's a real person there. So she's got her work cut out for her. She's got to clean house in the premier's office. She's going to bring in her own circle of advisors. You remember Jason Kenney was blasted for bringing in all these outsiders from Toronto who didn't understand Alberta. To be his advisors. I think as a premier, Danielle Smith is smarter than that. And I think she will listen to advice, and she will listen to her inner circle, before doing, anything major. I think it's going to be a huge thing, naming the new cabinet. What do you do with Travis Taves? Many people say he did a good job as finance minister. Do you keep him in there? As you said in the intro, things are looking up for right now. The province is booming. People are moving here by the thousands. New high-tech companies are opening up all over the place. So do you keep Travis Taves as finance minister, or do you move somebody else in there? Does Todd Lowen get a shot in the cabinet? Maybe as a minister or something like that. So it's going to be some fascinating decisions, on who she picks for the cabinet, and that'll be how the focus that her government takes.
Definitely an interesting time for Alberta as well. Now, Dave, have we heard anything of substance from Rachel Notley and the NDP since Smith took over the leadership?
Well, the Rachel Notley NDP election machine has been sort of in full power for a couple of weeks now. They're putting out 2 or 3 press releases a day. They have any announcement the UCP makes within half an hour. There's a press release from the NDP saying how wrong the UCP is. Rachel Notley held a press conference an hour or so ago, again slamming Smith for her COVID vaccine comments, saying, you know, it's unfit and she's not worthy as a leader. So, you know, the election's not too far off in May. I think it's fair to say the gloves have come off already. No honeymoon period for Premier Smith, and it's going to be a good, long, drag 'em out fight from now until the end of May. And Jeanette, I for one can't wait.
I think we're all on the edge of our seats for that one.
I'm just trying to imagine the debate. Right? I mean, those two would tear into each other.
Oh, absolutely. I think it will be very exciting as well, because they're both such strong personalities, if you would, right? Okay, so one thing that we have been discussing this week that we're seeing is Smith's need for a seat in the legislature, which now MLA for Brooks Medicine Hat, Michaela Frey, is volunteering. So this is a solid conservative seat, but it sounds like the NDP are considering bringing in a ringer to win the seat. So what are your thoughts on this, Dave?
Well, she needed to get into the legislature quickly, and obviously she found a willing participant to stand aside. She did take a lot of flack, though, because she called the by-election in the Brooks Medicine Hat one, but did not call it in the open seat of Calgary Elbow. You know, some people said she should have run in Calgary Elbow, but she wants to represent a rural area. She says to show the importance of you know, the rural voter and what the rural person thinks. And it is going to be a battle of rural versus urban in the election.
Do you think that that's what it really is, or do you think that she has possibly more popularity in that area?
I think she would have a tougher time winning in Calgary Elbow. There's no doubt about it. And that's what it's going to come down to in the election. The rural areas will support the UCP. Edmonton will be a solid NDP, and Calgary is the battleground. So can you imagine if she ran in Calgary Elbow and lost?
Could you imagine? Yeah.
So yeah, I think obviously Brooks Medicine Hat is probably a safe seat, and she made the right call. But you know, it does look, you know, it is a little bit hypocritical not to call it at the same time, I think. But you know, but it just gives the NDP ammunition to say she's afraid to do so.
What about Smith uniting the party and bringing back Todd Loewen and Drew Barnes? Is this a good or a bad decision?
Well, I think it's good. From what our sources said, you know, the vote to expel Todd was very close. Danielle mentioned Todd in her victory speech. Said, you know, we'll see you Monday at the caucus meeting, and we talked to Todd yesterday, and he confirmed that he's officially back in. Drew Barnes is another issue. He has not been mentioned at all by Danielle Smith, and he sort of hasn't issued a statement yet. So Drew Barnes is going to be a lot more interesting to see what happens to him. And yeah, another story for us to keep an eye on.
Now, we've also heard in passing that Leela Ahir may run for the federal Liberals in an upcoming federal election. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, her policies would seem to fit more with the Liberals than with a Conservative Party. She ran on she was basically called, you know, as far left a UCP candidate as you can get. You know, there were rumors that she may run for the NDP provincially. Her board has had a lot of troubles, boards being fired, boards being rehired, new nomination votes going ahead, and she had family members on the board that was dismissed. So it's really been an ugly time for Miss Ahir.
Yeah, not to mention her Twitter account being hacked and all of that mess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing for a Liberal to get elected in Calgary, in Northeast Calgary, where they were elected federally. It's another thing to elect a Liberal in a rural area. I'm not sure that's even happened in my lifetime. But Yeah, well, she's got an interesting future ahead of her too.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you'd mentioned, of course, Jason Kenney earlier in our interview. So, in your opinion, what value would Kenney bring to the table as an MLA?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. Surely he's not going to come back as an MLA. Surely he's not going to sit in the same caucus meetings with his successor. I don't see how he can swallow his pride and do that.
Yeah, it would be difficult.
In fact, I had a story yesterday. There's a website, or sorry, not a website, a Twitter handle called Unite Alberta, which basically is operated by Kenney and his people, for lack of a better word. And they put up a very scathing tweet about Premier Smith's comments on the COVID vaccine, basically saying, she didn't apologize because she didn't use the word sorry. Maybe she doesn't understand the issue. Now, that tweet was up for a grand total of 3 minutes before it was taken down. But, as you know, Jeanette, yourself, in this day and age of social media, in that 3 minutes, it was screen captured by hundreds of people. And, that tweet is still out there now. And this is coming from the Jason Kenney-led Twitter handle. So, he's already poking at his successor. So still hasn't resigned as an MLA, but I honestly can't see him going back into the ledge. There's rumors, that he's going to, get on the board of directors of various companies. So we'll see how that goes. But I, for one, will be shocked if he is seen in the legislature again.
Yeah, maybe he'll start up his own distillery and call it Sky Palace Spirits or something.
There you go. Yeah. Not a bad idea.
There you go. We'll see what's in the cards for him. It looks like we're out of time, though. But thanks so much for joining me once again, Dave.
Anytime, Jeanette.
Absolutely. That was Dave Naylor, editor of the Western Standard. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.